And welcome everybody to another great episode of Cup of Joel, the place where we talk about everything and anything in any way. I am once again your host, Joel, and I gotta say, first off, I'm sorry I was a bit late today. This week. I was actually recording for an episode, but then I had a pause. And it was quite an interesting experience, so I kind of want to talk about it before I get to the subject, because it's kind of related to it. But essentially, I was writing about confidence, and I'm probably going to redo the episode some other time. But at the moment when I got halfway there, I stopped as if I felt, in a sense, possessed by an idea. I couldn't explain it exactly, but it was like, in my head, it was, this is not the episode we're going to talk about today. And so I thought about it. It took me almost a day and a half. And now I figured out what the subject is. So I'm going to try to explain it as much as possible today. And hopefully we discover something. But yeah, so here's the phrase I wanted to explore, or more so the theme of this phrase, of course. And it's about the tiredness of society. I know that sounds a bit odd, but here's how you could start this thought. They say, a lot of people like to brag about being tired, right? It's like, I'm tired of this, or, I didn't get enough sleep, and, so there's physical tired, and there's also, like, everyone seems to be tired of the bullshit, if you will. Which is an interesting thought, because it's like, is our generation, in a sense, the tired generation, right? We're in a society where everything is easy and you should be energized, and yet here we are, more tired than ever. I mean, we had people working on the farms for forever, right? And they never seem to be... We don't have, like, pages and pages and pages of ancient history telling people, just writing about how exhausted they are every day. They seem quite content with their lives as a whole, and yet here we are, us, being incredibly exhausted, most of the time, and yet we spend a lot of our time relaxing to a certain degree, right? We're playing games or watching videos and stuff like that. I mean, hell, this podcast itself is, to an extent, an educational, but also, to an extent, you come here to listen to stuff while relaxing to an extent. So I find it quite interesting, this sort of, we're all tired, right? So, for example, me, yesterday, I had this weird thought, just for fun, where I was like, I'm a tired spirit. Right, because it was sort of like I was physically tired when I said this, but it's sort of like I felt that I had this sort of tired mentality these last few months. I don't know if it was COVID related or anything else, but I had this sort of, I'm just tired of, like this, like of my day-to-day routine, which I found fascinating, again, because my day-to-day routine is probably more exciting than my ancestors, and I don't, like I said, I haven't. There's no texts in the past, or maybe I know of anyway, that talk about the constant fatigue of man. And so, let's dive into it. I'm not a sleep expert, so I'm not going to try to go into biological. I'm really going to explore the more psychological aspect of this. But let's talk about what fatigue is to an extent. Fatigue is it's like you want to do something, but you start to lose the capacity to do it, right? Either the motivation, either the willpower. So motivation or willpower, talk about that, the difference. So either you lose the capacity to have the willpower for it, or you lose simply the motivation to do it. That is a part of fatigue. There's physical fatigue, where literally your body does not want to, cannot push further. There's psychological fatigue, in the sense that your brain does, motivation and will, yes, but also the capacity simply to think, right? So that would be like, you go through 2 really hard exams, yeah, you're not going to be pushing your brain any harder after that. So there's actually a mental fatigue. But it was interesting when I said yesterday, I said my spirit was fatigued, which was interesting because I'm not very religious, so I don't believe in the spirit, but I know that when I say that, that's more of a symbolic representation of what I'm talking about. So I wondered, what was I trying to say? And like I said before, I believe it's sort of, I'm tired of the fight of the routine that we have every day, So there's a ton of things that I'm trying to change for the better in my life. And, of course, there's things I have to do that I dislike, homework-wise or, cleaning-wise or, the mundane stuff. And I think the weird thing is it's sort of like, it feels like battling, right? Constant battling when you do these things. And so I think to an extent that's what I mean when I said I was spiritedly tired. It's not that I'm tired mentally, I can't do them, or that even that I lack complete motivation. It's more so that I am tired of the battle because, humans we're fighting creatures to an extent, but we're not just built to fight. We're built to fight sometimes. We're built to fight when necessary, to survive and blah, blah, blah. But after that, we are pacifist creatures. And I know that sounds like a kind of weird tangent. I'm just exploring the idea. And the sort of mundane fighting, like when we normalize fighting in our lives, so essentially the struggle of just convincing ourselves to do things, and the struggle of sort of finding the power in us to do the things that... the problem is not so much that the thing is hard, so much as is continuous, right? That every day we have a new wave of basically the same thing. It's almost like, if you want to get literal, well, not literal, but symbolic. Imagine you woke up and you had to fight a boxer every day, right? But it's like, you could do it, you could probably beat the boxer, I mean, let's say you're good at boxing, so you could beat the boxer maybe. But it's just that every time you wake up, you have to fight that boxer again, which is annoying because you almost feel like, I suppose in comparison, when you compare yourself to other people, right, more successful people, they either seem to be so good at their lives that they just beat the boxer immediately, or they seem to have to fight at all. So, for example, motivation and willpower, they don't seem to have to motivate themselves. They just do it, right? Now, of course, they'll do speeches and they'll be like, yeah, I struggle like all of you. But, when we look at them, to us, the things they're doing is insane. And then we feel like we're fighting the low tiers, and yet we're dying, basically. And then the high tiers, they're fighting, and they seem like they're barely trying. So I think, in a sense, that's why I'm talking about the societal fatigue. I think it's more like society is very hard to run. It's a very complicated system. And we're asked to do very boring and mundane things, and also incredibly complex things at the same time, constantly. So we're having intense battles just for mental, intense battles physically. We're asked, well, less so now, and a lot of, like I said, motivational battles. So, for example, okay, I'm not asking you just to do this homework. I'm also asking you this homework is pretty hard, and you might not want to do it. Do it every single time you go to course. And, I'm going to try to not make this a complaining episode, but to an extent, I want to explore this idea, because for some reason there's something that grips me in the idea when I said that society is tired, because I feel that there's something, there's a precedent, and also there's a conclusion to this that we must be aware of, which enhance is why I'm so gripped by it. Here's the idea, is that there's a bunch of things you should do in life to get a more successful in growth as a person, right? So a good example of this would be trying to be honest, not bullshitting, not just doing the monotone, but actually listening to people. Actually, yeah, let's talk about listening. So a lot of people hear people, but they don't listen, right? Listening is it takes an effort, and you have to sort of cut out all the thought in your head and actually try to focus on what the person's saying. And actually, full communication is a quite extraneous process, right? But I feel, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like because of all the stuff we have to do, that even listening seems to be dying in a sense. So you'll sit with a friend, right? And a conversation will not ensue, more so that you guys are going to get a phone out, and then you'll kind of monologue about things that don't really matter. I'm not saying that this is necessary for me, but I have noticed this in general, right? So you'll sit down, you'll pick up your phone, and you'll look at stuff, and then in sort of a half ear, you'll listen to someone else. Or you will have conversations, but they're pretty empty, and then like I've noticed this in my life. Sometimes you'll have conversations, and then you'll talk the next day, and basically they bring up the same thing that you talked about yesterday, right? So it's like the conversation is basically it was like it didn't exist because it's like, oh, I forgot. But it's like, yeah, well, we had like an hour conversation about this, and we forgot about it, right? So I think that's really fascinating, because it's sort of like, and there's another good thing of that is sort of like, people watch motivational videos and all that, but again, I found with myself and I found with others, it's like you send the video or whatever, and then they watch it and they go, oh, that was really interesting, whatever, and then I ask myself, for example, to deconstruct what I just watched, and like 90% of it I didn't pay attention, or at least I did, but it's sort of like I heard it, but I didn't absorb it at all. And I think that's part of the fact that we just get so much information. Every day we're blasted with a ton of information, and we get fatigued. I think this is what I mean, is that in a sense, it's not that we're fatigued now, but more so that society is constantly in fatigue mode because we're bombarded with too much of everything, and the truth is we need to slow the hell down if we want to absorb, right? So, for example, for me, I have a lot of courses, and I remember specifically that, like, one course I'll try my best to listen to, but then I'll have 3 more courses, and then I'm not there, right? Especially at the last one. The last one, it's like, how the hell do you want me to pay attention, right? And that's the thing. It's like, but society is sort of structured in this way where it's like, there's so much that one person can do, but, like the businessman, in a sense, doesn't actually do... He does a lot of physical things, right? But psychologically, he must not be as taxed as we are, to an extent. And again, I'm not trying to bring down businessmen. I'm just saying, like, I'm exploring the idea. To me, I feel like society is losing the capacity to care on multiple spectrums. So, for example, one of the levels that we seem to be bothered by now is the empathy level, right? It's hard to have empathy for everyone, right? And there's a lot of problems in this world. So then it's like you open the internet and there can be a billion problems you can look at, right? And multiple spectrums. And it's hard for you to even react to all of them. So like emotionally and empathetically speaking, you're in a sense tired. You cannot continue on looking at all this data and react and act in it. In fact, you can't even act on all the problems. So in that sense, you're tired. And the problem with that is if you're tired here, you're going to be tired in your life as well. So your friends are going to come up with problems with you, or they're going to bring up some anxieties and stuff like that, but you're not ready because you're tired. Because everyone's sort of tired. And so this creates this bad ecosystem where essentially everyone starts to bubble up their problems a little more. And we do talk about them, but we talk about our problems in a sort of content way. And I'm not saying that we stop listening to ourselves. I'm not saying that like this is that we're constantly in this state of tired. I'm just saying that I've noticed that our society seems to be more tired as time goes on because everything is opening up, right? So people come out. This guy does this, like the sort of cancel culture that exists and all that. It all sort of builds up into this fatigue because we can be riled up a lot, right? I mean, the protests and all that. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like the protest is almost like an anger in fatigue. When you're tired, you start getting like angry at everything, right? Irritated. I think it's that. I think it's sort of like that. We're just tired of all the onslaught of things just constantly bombarded at us. And, I mean, hell, when we're listening to something, we need to filter if the thing is true or not. Bro, with all the stuff we're listening to, how are we going to have time to also filter? I mean, when I talk about arguments, I noticed that I stopped looking for sources anymore because I literally just don't have the patience anymore. Like, I'll just stop. I'll stop trying to find specific examples, but instead I'll just try to be a general idea, right? I'll live in generality because to find a specific example, I need to basically ask myself if I can trust a source. I gotta find an actual source. I gotta find if that source is valid, and even if that source actually proves my point. And there's so many contradictive examples. So like you'll have one example, and then there's going to be a take that's different on another site telling you, oh, this is actually not what happened, and then you got to ask yourself if this one works. And you might say, oh, you can do all that, but the thing is, it's like my point. The argument I was bringing it in the first place when I have a debate or whatever is not even worth all that work at the end of the day, because it's more like I'm just voicing an opinion, so having a specific example is too tiring. And so I feel like a lot of aspects of our society are starting to get tired, and the effects of these things is sort of like, for example, okay, let's go into multiple places. So we have relationships. People are getting lazy in how they find relationships, right? It's sort of like online that's lazy. I think personally, I think there could be good with online relationships, but there's so much. It's so like one dimensional in a sense, like, oh, how do you physically look and what can you say that sounds attractive? And the funny thing is, people don't even, the phrase "be yourself." That's basically gone down the fucking toilet with online dating, because it's like there's a billion videos of how you should look, right, to be attractive to women online, and what you should say, and blah 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 blah. And then afterwards, you basically you're not yourself at all when you're online and you're dating, and you're also sort of tired of getting connection, so you don't even really want a intense relationship, but more so a sort of symbolic relationship of saying, hey, I have this, and then also the sex that comes with it. And so we seem to be tired in our relationships, and then again in our interpersonal with friends. Like I said, one of the things that get it's like we're losing the depth of relationships because we have to put additional effort, right? You have to go out with people, you have to actually try to get into deep levels with them. You have to reveal yourself to them in a real way. You have to sort of show your vulnerability, and you have to do work on that vulnerability, which, by the way, I think is the third one. So friendship, but then friendship turns also into yourself, the relationship you have with yourself, that I believe is also, in a sense, dying, or because you're too tired to self-evaluate, right? You'll feel pain, and then a part of you goes numb it by distracting yourself. So basically don't think about it. Or maybe you're depressed, or you have immediately a mental illness, so go get a pill. And the problem with that is sort of like, if you have a psychological problem, that takes a lot of time, first of all, to get through, right? You have to talk about it, you have to work on it, like physically, you have to understand its source to an extent, but and you have to have a lot of empathy, and then you have to be able to explain it to other people so that you can, in a sense, own the pain itself. And so there's all these processes, and it's like, it's also really painful, right? It's like something that, like, therapy, in a sense, is sort of like a day thing. Like, you don't just do something else and then you go to therapy. It's sort of like, no, therapy is like a big point of your day, right? It's one of the main dishes. And so when you do psychological work on yourself, it is one of the main points of your day, right? But we're tired, right, as a society. So then we do less of this. Like, I'm not trying to diss the gamer community, but I've talked to some of my friends were gamers, and so was I to an extent. And I remember that I would try to open up with some stuff, and it's not that they weren't there for me, but it's more so that it's like they didn't take a lot of time to think about this kind of stuff. And like, everyone have issues, but it's sort of like some of like their problems, they almost wear it as like a part of their personality. The sort of like self-deprecating, almost laugh at how bad my life is, sort of thing. Like, men that feel like sad and alone, they'll kind of meme it, in a sense, right, online. And so instead of dealing with the problems, they do like the fatigue version of it, being like, I don't care, right? So they just don't think about it, essentially. Or if they do think about it, they turn it into a part of their craft, which is sort of, like I said, a negative consequence. Because the problem is, you can't treat yourself like that, right? You're not just an object, and your emotions are not just this thing. It has a physical aspect. And like, just for example, the sort of weird romanticizing of suicide, like it's almost like a joke at this point, right? It's like, this is an intense topic, right? And then here we are using this topic almost like I said, it's almost like it's just a part of me, But in the past, if someone had that thought, they wouldn't just like they wouldn't just live their lives and not care. No, a suicidal thought is a big thought, and it implies a lot of psychological issue. But the fact that people just talk about it as if it was an everyday thing seems to me to be a product of this sort of fatigue. We're just we don't want to deal with things anymore. And so even when the most intense things in our heads come up, like suicide, we push it aside and say it's nothing, right? And we go back to our video games and all that, when in reality, we should absolutely stop. Basically, we should almost stop everything we're doing and take a big look at what we're doing. But we're tired. And so I think that's the sort of point, is that we're losing this capacity to react to things that are important, right? To build up things that are more real, and we're becoming more surface level, right? And by the way, I'm not saying that that's all that's happening. There's also another part of society that's really developing and doing the exact opposite, where we talk about mental illness better, and where we learn to quit the mask stuff, right? I talked about it last time, but like removing the mask. So there is a part of society that's doing that, and there is a part of society that's working on how to have a better life with meditation and all that stuff. There's all the self-help. There is a good part of it that is beneficial, right? To how to work with your schedule, and how to limit yourself on your phone and all that. And so, I'm not saying that it's all black and, all black. There's some white. But again, this is going to sound cheesy. There's black, there's white, and there's a part that's in the gray. And I think that the majority is in the gray. And maybe because we're more pessimistic, I would say that the issue with the fatigue is problematic just because it's on a grand scale, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say your brother's tired, right? Well, okay, so your brother might not do the work that he has to do, but the rest of the family will, well, okay, maybe your brother's a bit weird. Let's say a coworker is tired, so he does a little less work today, but you'll help him out and you'll cover for him, right? If you're both tired, there's kind of a problem, right? If everyone's tired in the building, that's kind of a problem. And so, again, this is a physical example, but when I mean, this works in every domain. So it's sort of like, if somebody's trying to open to them to the world because they have an issue, right? And they're too tired to really go into the work to, work it out and understand the thing, the problem. And then you're too tired to help them, right? And not only that, you're too tired to help them because not only are their problems complicated, but you have the same problems and you're too tired to deal with them as well. So literally, the progress is so dried up because we've lost this energy to. It's sort of like, let's put it this way: when someone used to open up, and I'm not a in the old days guy because I'm pretty young, but when people used to open up, there's this sense of, this is a big thing, right? It's sort of like everyone in the village kind of knew. Now, but I'm not saying that that was the best way to live. I'm just saying that sort of like any announcement was a big announcement, and there was not a lot of announcements, and so people could deal with it and chew on it, and an emperor stubbed his toe, and then it was like a big conversation about that. But anyway, so. Sorry, a little humor in these dark times, as they say. So my point being that now it's sort of like we talk about the most intense stuff all the time, but none of it phases. I mean, for hell, think about all the suicide rates and all the, the fact that suicide has been such a big, prominent part of our society nowadays, and that it's actually getting, it's increasing to an extent, is pretty concerning. I mean, when you think about, time, like, life was worse before, and yet here we are more depressed than ever. And I think to an extent that has to do with the fact that we do not, it's like we have the issues, but we're sort of like too tired to fight them, right? Too tired to confront them, too tired to put in the work to work them out. And, people say, just try and all that. And that's the thing. It's like, it's almost like the issue is not, it's not that you don't want to fight, is that people feel like they're losing the battle as they're fighting, right? So it's sort of like, I have this issue, and I've been trying to beat it for like a month or 2 months or a year, and it's still there. right? Still, for example, I still feel like I'm lazy. I still feel like, there's some addictions I have, and I'm still on that. And it's sort of like, it just makes you so fatigued because you feel like, like I said, you're fighting a boxer every day, and it's like, and you're not getting anywhere with that, right? It's exhausting to fight them, but, there's no progress. And so to an extent, you just give up. You give up, and then you're just tired. You're tired forever, essentially. And then, the problem is, problems don't just go away when you raise the flag and say, I give up. So essentially they keep growing, and then at some point they're overwhelming, but you don't want to fight them anymore. And so they become overwhelming, and then at some point you can't even deal with the fact that they're still there because essentially it's like now you're not fighting the boxer anymore. You're just waking up and the boxer's kicking the shit out of you, right? And then, he gets stronger every day because he keeps working out, whatever, and you get in a sense weaker because you stop fighting him. And then at some point, you had enough. And so, I'm not trying to simplify suicide at all. I'm just talking about sort of like what I've noticed and what I think is it's this problem that in a sense is kind of also difficult to deal with. In fact, the fact that I'm bringing this up is kind of paradoxical, right? Because this is a big problem that we're too tired to deal with. But in a sense, you could say it's a source, an important source. So then the big question is, what do we do about it, right? What do we do with the fatigue of society? And also, how on what, because it's multiple levels, like I said, there's moral, empathy, physical, mental, emotional, like all the levels we're getting tired. And so the source is, like I said, is I think there's too much information to an extent. We have to interact with so much and react to so much. And by the way, to an extent, it's quite ironic, isn't it, that we're tired because we watch too much information. And so, like, when we're tired, to relax, we watch information, right? Like, again, I always bring back the farmers, but, like, if a farmer was tired, he sat down on a chair and looked at, like, the car, like, or like the horse pass by, or literally just time. He would just wait there, basically, just watching things pass, like looking at trees and stuff. I know this is stereotypical, but my point being that sort of like he didn't go and do more farming when he was tired. That would be insane. And yet that's what we do, right? Like, I work, for example, I have a job, and when I'm going on break, I will either, most people take out their phone and they watch stuff, right? And then, like, for example, you're in class, and then you have a break in between classes, and then what do? You go to the bathroom, and then you play videos or play video games until the class starts back. It's like, how is that relaxing? I mean, it's relaxing in the fact that, like, it's fun, but it's not relaxing in the fact that, like, you're not relaxing your brain. You're stimulating it still. And, we go to sleep less, too, so that's actually physical fatigue and mental fatigue. And so my point being that we, like, I mean, it is a sign. Let's say it right now. It's a sign that we are fatigued if our way to stop being fatigued is to still consume, right? That means that we're consuming so much intense stuff that literally the break is just... It's sort of like when you work out, like, really intensely, right? Like big dumbbells or whatever, and then you're relaxing is like jogging, right? Or like lifting little weights, right? It's sort of like that guy's so high in his workouts, right? That now, like, relaxing is literally still working out. And so to us, it's like, we're in intense mode all the time. And so to an extent, that's a problem. But now I'm going to get, again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm literally just trying to explore the idea. But the thing that's going to be problematic is the solution here, right? Because what's the solution? It would kind of be, well, you have to learn to actually relax. And people, there's the whole meditation thing and all that. But I think the problem is that meditation is a moment, and also that we have sort of like our lifestyle is being tired. Like people that you met that always like, I'm always tired. I feel like we're all living the lifestyle of we're always tired. We're always done with this shit and all that. It's like, when's the last time you seen somebody that comes in as like super motivated to do something? Like I open classes on Zoom and stuff like that, and you look at the people, they all look dead. I'm not saying that we're all physically tired. I'm saying that we all look like we're done with this shit, even when it's the first day. Even when it's like day one of the class, we're already done with the class, right? And that's such a bad sign. Like, I remember when I was a kid, at least, after the break, because I was literally, I remember before video games, I would literally just stand around doing nothing. And I remember when school came back, I was actually really motivated to go there, and it actually lasted long, But recently, when I go on a Christmas vacation and all that, you come back and it's like, bro, I'm already done, And so, yeah, I think so. The solution would be sort of to go back to boredom, right? Because boredom is the actual relaxation in a sense. And to be bored is to literally disconnect from everything. But that's a really hard thing to do. It's again, it's ironic because you're actually gonna have to put effort to instantly relax, which is paradoxical, because we're so used to being on the button that it's sort of like a jog. If you ever ran really fast, or you have a car that goes really really fast, right? Stopping the car is very difficult as well. It's difficult because you're such in a quick motion forever that slowing it down is almost hyper difficult. So it's paradoxical, and again the problem is sort of like, since we know we're in overdrive, if we stop completely, restarting is going to be very hard as well, right? Because we're in this momentum, but we need an actual break. And then when we restart, the ideal would be to not restart at the intensity that we were, but society is structured in this way where we're always working at the intensity of of this intensity. Like, it's our new normal in a sense. And I think to an extent we have to. I'm not a big proponent on restructuring, mainly because I'm 20, so like recommending huge societal changes is kind of idiotic. It's like a monkey trying to fix a helicopter. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know. I mean, I know that meditation and like taking time off is always good, like going on walks, like literally forcing yourself to disconnect, right? Putting your phone aside and actually taking time. That's important. To me, I've always found that the best way to actually have time to put effort on things is that you take very long. Like, for example, if I'm going to go on a walk, I'm not going on a 1 hour walk. For me, I mean, if you can go on a 1 hour walk, good for you. But for me, I would go like 3 hours minimum. And the reason is, it's sort of like, I'm sort of forcing myself to relax. It's weird. It's sort of like, because in the beginning, I remember like the first hour, I'm not there. Right? I'm still like a hype mode. I'm still thinking. I'm still like, stressing out and all that. And in the second hour, I'm kind of getting through. Right? I'm kind of getting into that slowing down phase. And then the third hour, now I'm there. Right? Now I'm getting there. And then after that, I usually start coming back from my walk, and then I start to feel much better, because in a sense, I finally arrived to the point. It literally took me 3 hours to learn how to get to that relaxed state. And then I basically walk for a few hours after that to sort of enjoy that relaxed state. And it's really fascinating, because then afterwards I feel much better, and I feel I can fight the world again to an extent. But so yeah, it's sort of like I think society kind of knows this to an extent, with the vacations, where it's like, get away from everything, right? Like, physically leave everything that you had behind so you don't have to think about it. And nowadays, like, when you go on vacations, you tend to want to do 2 weeks, because the first week is sort of like, the first few days you haven't unpacked, and so it takes you like almost a week to get through it, and then the second week you can actually enjoy. So anyway, so that was my thought about all that. Yeah, I think to an extent, one of the problems that we can evaluate is that our society is tired because we're hyperstimulated. I don't think it's an easy solution, and I don't think, hell, the fact that I'm talking about this problem, to what extent are we going to put effort into solving it? It depends. We're already dealing with a lot of things, but I think I wish that in a sense we could fix these problems quickly, but of course that's not how life works. But yeah, so I just wanted to bring it up, because to me it sort of grasped me. It grasped me with me. I noticed it in me, as I'm just like so fed up with things that I'm supposed to love. Like, I love philosophy, and then I'm in school in philosophy, and I would imagine that I would be in it, but I'm dead right now. Like, and I think COVID, by the way, of course we have to take COVID into account and all this, but yeah, so I feel like really tired,
in that spectrum. And then when I talk to friends and all that, I notice this sort of fatigue. And then when I look at the internet and all that, like the internet seems so done with everything. Like now, like what's pressing. It's like, for example, politics. People are done with politics. You know, it's like they're so people. This is another problem. Ideology, right? Ideology is like the easy way to do politics. Which, like, I'm not gonna think about my opinion. I'm just gonna like pick an ideology and stick to it. And I've noticed that ideology is like so much more prominent now, right? Like people are one side of the political spectrum or the other. And they basically take everything that the political spectrum has, except for a few things sometimes, right? And what does that entail? That entails fatigue. It's because we do not take the time anymore to actually build our own opinions on these things and really evaluate both sides, because it's hard and it's long and we don't have time for this. And again, politics is like, with the 24 hours of like TV, CNN or Fox News basically telling you all the horrible things the other side did in all these manners. And like, I mean, you remember it's kind of ironic. I didn't even focus on Canadian politics when I'm Canadian, and instead I focused on how the president of the United States was doing, and I had no opinion. Like, there was so much stuff for 4 years in the U.S., and I could not, like, not only could I not even deal with all that was happening, I was basically reacting to the surface of the surface, right, of what was happening. Like, and, there's a ton of videos online of, like, people literally telling you, like, basic stuff about, like, candidates in politics, and then no one knows who the politician is, right? So, he'll tell somebody a policy, and then they'll be like, oh, this must be the policy of the person on my side. No, it's the opposite, right? So they do, like, they'll tell you phrases that they'll tell you phrases that Trump said, and then it's like, oh, you think it's Bernie Sanders? Well, that's Trump, or the opposite way around, and stuff like that. And it's because we're so goddamn tired of all this, right? And then and there's so much information, like I said, in all spectrums, and so I think it is that fatigue. But we can't cut information. We can only control the amount that we take. And I also think this is probably going to be my last point for today, but I also think the big issue with all this is sort of like, okay, there's all this information, right? So then you tell yourself, all right, I'll just filter out and only focus to what's important, right? But the thing is that the world has understood that. And so what they do is they make things seem more important, right? So that's like clickbait. That's literally what they're doing. Clickbait is saying, hey, this is really important, right? Like, you want to focus on this. And, like, I mean, think about, like, the news. Like I said, TV shows like Fox and whatever. If you look at their what they're saying, like the phrases, they go, oh, this person said this person's a pedophile, whatever. And it's like, big thing, right? It's like, oh, big reaction. This is a fundamental thing. This is going to change everything. And then they have, like, 20 interviews about it with people like the guy outside that has nothing to do with this. They basically just like big scream all the time. They're literally always yelling, right? About like how everything is always like fundamental and breaking down, and like it's like global warming is almost as intimidating as like one guy slept with a girl when he was 16. It's like they feel the same now, and so we literally dismiss all things because of that. And so yeah, that's my talk about societal fatigue. I hope my solutions can help to an extent. If you can find ways to take breaks and all that, take actual time for yourself. And I think also we should always prioritize ourselves, at least, because we're all, in a sense, the main piece of the puzzle, right? I know that sounds weird, but sort of like, if you don't focus on yourself and the other person doesn't focus on themselves, then the puzzle just sucks, right? But if you focus on being the best, it's like you're part of the engine, and you should be the best part. You should be the best version of yourself in that engine, and so that everyone else does the same thing as you're doing, and then we just have a great engine instead of you focusing on every other part, right? So I'm not saying that to an extent you should be focusing on politics to the insane degree or anything in particular. I think the priority could be yourself. Focus on yourself. Take time to relax, actually relax, and then afterwards self-evaluate and work on yourself to make sure that and then you go in multiple spectrums. Like, okay, what's my moral perspective on things? What's my political perspective on things? And you can do that slowly. Try to avoid ideology. If you have religious beliefs, you can explore that as well. And in all the spectrums. But in general, I think focusing on yourself is the best, because you're most likely gonna get better results in any case, right? In any situation. So that was my talk. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, it kind of gripped me. I had to talk about it. I'm going to still post another video this week. That's my plan. And hey, we're at episode 6, guys. That's pretty amazing, It's almost a week. One more day and we're at a week of content. I've been enjoying this a lot. To me, it's a quite explorational process, all of this. And I've learned so much. It's interesting. It's sort of like learning to me has always been through conversation. Yes, there's school, but to an extent, I've learned a lot just talking. And in a sense, now when I'm doing the podcast, I feel like I'm actually talking to people. Maybe not in the present always, but certainly in the future, right? At some point, a few people will stumble on and listen to my thing, and in a sense, we're communicating in that sense. And I feel like I'm learning. I think I'm evolving, and I hope you guys are enjoying the journey with me. Also, as I said, I am planning to do a face reveal soon. I'm also planning on other things. I've been thinking about other types of videos and how to make my podcast more entertaining, visually speaking. I might do something like a sort of documentary format kind of thing, or like movie kind of thing. So it's kind of like the podcast, but in a more visual, sound way. It'll be less exploratory, like what I'm doing now. So I'm probably going to keep the podcast to do the exploratory things. But if I ever have an idea that I feel I've developed well enough, I might do these sort of videos where it's like I show, like I said, like a movie documentary thing where I explore an idea. I also want to do some other formats that I'm not going to share everything right now, because people will be like, where's this at? But I'm thinking about some stuff, and I just gotta get good at editing, to be honest. I gotta get good at, getting used to producing stuff like that, and getting comfortable in putting that extra effort. I mean, like I said, I'm tired. I'm tired in a lot of things, so I need to also take care of myself to an extent to be able to be productive in the YouTube world, because the YouTube world is a part, but is not the totality of my life. And so, that's what I've been thinking about. But again, I enjoy it immensely. I really do. This is really something special to me, and I'm really happy I'm doing this. So, I hope you enjoyed another great episode of Cup of Joe. I've been Joel. This has been fun. Have a great week, everybody. And I'm finally Joel, signing off.